screening as part of the Melbourne Documentary Film Festival this month in
Yeah.
July is Dancing Against the Odds. And it's my great pleasure to be speaking to the director of that film, Matt Byrne. Matt, welcome to Movie Metropolis.
Hi, Peter, how you going?
Good. Now, tell me about the origins of this film. It's such a fascinating dance company that's obviously part of this.
Yeah, well, I suppose this film came about largely because of COVID. The Restless Dance Theatre were collaborating with Sun Young, who's the choreographer from South Korea, and her dance company in Seoul, and they were due to head there in in 2020. They'd been over for an initial trip with Ros Hervey, who features in the film. They'd been over in 2019 and were coming back in 2020 to further develop a dance work together. And then, of course, COVID happened, and so. Uh, I guess Restless Dance Theatre are a group of dancers who are used to waking up every day with immediate challenges. All of the dancers have varying different levels of disability, or in most cases, there are some able-bodied dancers that feature in the film, but on the whole, Restless Dance Theatre are predominantly dancers with a disability. Um, so I guess like a lot of disabled people, they just took the challenge and thought, well, how do we continue to create work when we can't traverse, thousands of kilometers and meet up in Seoul? And everyone, like we're chatting on Zoom today. I don't think any of us really had heard about Zoom before about March the 13th, 2020. And by about April 2020, we're all becoming experts at Zoom. So the work continued to develop via Zoom. And that's sort of how I also came into the mix, just documenting what was happening at this side, and then it very quickly became a documentary.
Okay, so tell me about the challenges in actual filming these dance sequences and so on. Were you the sole camera operator, or were there others involved? Tell me more.
Well, we did a first iteration in 2021. After there was some, work over Zoom in 2021, we decided to get together and actually do a dance work that was a video work. So that meant us filming here in Adelaide, and also me instructing a team of filmmakers in Seoul, how to, yeah, basically we found a space that would work, and communicating, in terms of what camera formats, what lenses, how to film the work, what style of photography to use, handheld, dollies, zooms, etc., or or actually lack thereof. Not wanting any sort of zoom work and not wanting any gimbal work, but keeping it all very fluid and handheld and natural. Um, but also trying to communicate that with a group of filmmakers who are not English speaking, and I don't speak any Korean whatsoever. Even after working with these guys for a few years, I think my brain, that part of my brain that once upon a time could have learned another language, has somewhat diminished. And so I know a few basic greetings in Korean, but my Korean's not great. So really, but that's interesting, where we discovered that the language of film is very universal, and also the language of dance. Because it's very demonstrative. Through film, I can show storyboards and I can demonstrate the framing I want. I can demonstrate in terms of camera formats. It's quite, that's all pretty universal. But also with dance, I think, if Larissa was here, she'd probably be who was the choreographer of the work, um, called Counterpoise, which forms the foundation of the documentary. Um, Larissa would say that, she was also working with Sungyeon, who was a choreographer who didn't speak English, and Larissa doesn't speak Korean. But they discovered over the, years of collaboration that they really rarely did they end up needing language. It was all about demonstrating and showing and using the body as the primary communication tool.
Ah, okay, okay, yes, all very interesting, and yes, having the camera sort of weaving in and out, and from
Mm,
shots from above, as well as
yeah, yeah.
yeah, which is really interesting, and that's that creative side of how do you make a creative film out of a group of dancers, and you certainly have shown that.
I think, yeah, so challenge was certainly logistics, like distance was a massive challenge. Language was the other massive challenge. And it sounds to me like you have had a chance to see the film Counterpoise. I
Yep.
appreciate you taking the time to watch both films. It's it's a hefty investment. When we premiered the works at Adelaide Film Festival, we played the dance film first and then the documentary second. And when we come to Melbourne, we're going to actually play the documentary first and then the dance film because I think there's a payoff there. Because you'll note in the doco, we get right up to the point of performance, and then I just cut straight to afterwards. Um, and a lot of audience were going, "Oh, we'd love to have seen the film afterwards," because we were sort of working up to this, watching it all being built and created. And what we ended up creating, we were fortunate enough in 23 to end up being able to take the Restless Dance Theatre Company to Seoul and spend 2 weeks there, re reworking, finalizing the development, and then rehearsing in the work, and then filming the work as a film work, and then also performing the work to a live audience. So we really got an immense payoff, and there would have been so many times over the course of those few years where it would have been really easy for everyone to go, "This is just too difficult." Trying to make this happen, funding is a major issue, but then. Kofis in Korea came on board with a sizable bit of funding that enabled us to actually finish the work, which was really wonderful. Finish the work through a film sense, but also in a live sense. So we were really fortunate. And it just sort of proves that sometimes you're a lot closer than what you realize, that if you just keep that perpetual motion forward, keep moving forward and keep just ticking off little things every single day before you know it, you've actually achieved that thing you set out to achieve.
Okay.
And
Oh,
hopefully
well,
that comes through in the doco.
it does. Look, well done on that. They certainly are. They make really interesting viewing, both of them, the Dancing Against the Odds and Counterpoise, as you
Oh,
mentioned.
thank you, Peter.
Yeah. So I was wondering, as I was watching, were there any particular filmmakers, films? I know Maya Deren comes to mind as a
Uh-huh.
dancer and choreographer and filmmaker as well. But were there any particular films or filmmakers that might have influenced your approach?
There's a film called Peanut
Ah,
by Wim Wenders where he documented the work of Pina Bausch.
yeah.
That was certainly a pretty reasonable influence in terms of how to capture that work, sort of that wide angle, um, taking in, very much like taking in the proscenium arch of a theatre work, trying to capture a theatre work, but then also I like to sort of get really in amongst it. So, and I guess
Mm,
I have my own natural handheld style that I feel really comfortable doing, which is a very I guess I'm referring to the dance work in this point in time. In terms of capturing that dance work, I like to get in and close to the dancers. It's been an interesting journey with me. I do a lot of work in live theatre. A lot of my background is in theatre and live theatre, but I also sort of have this dual trajectory of a filmmaker as well. And I like to marry the two. So I'm pretty fortunate in that sense. Um, but I guess, yeah, so for the dance film, probably that film Pina was an influence to a degree. And as a documentary filmmaker, I guess I'm not necessarily someone that wants to go down that traditional path of always trying to find the conflict and trying to find the drama. I prefer to find just to observe and to watch rather than push to inform. And you'll note that the drama just, it eventuates. And you can see there where Mike is one of the senior dancers with Restless Dance Theatre. He's 31 now. And in fact, probably 33 this year. So he would have been 31 in the film. And staring down that whole idea of losing his career in dance because of his injury that he suffers mid. And you can see the injury building. I actually put it in there pictorially, but I just don't spell it out quite so dramatically right until the middle of the film. And then it appears that his career is all but over. But then we cut to seeing him in Korea and it's all okay. And I'm happy to report that Mike is still dancing with the company to this day. So from a directorial point of view, I guess I try to be more of an observer than someone that tries to get in and dramatize, I suppose, for want of a better answer.
yep. No, I understand. So the documentary is a pretty tight 63 minutes. Tell me about your editing process because obviously getting it down to that sort of level and removing some footage and so on is always a difficult process.
Yeah, we had hours and hours of footage. And I guess it's always with these things, it's always good to work to a deadline. Um, and there's a desire from some to also make it even shorter, to which I sort of go, what would you take out? And there hasn't been an answer to that question. So I think we've landed on that 60 minute. I think it could have actually been longer. I think it might have, it, yeah, we landed at 60. I think you probably could, I would have loved it to have had a bit more breathing space in. And I did go back through and did another pass and started pulling out comments and tried to, give it a level of breathing space. So, yeah, it was a hell of a feat to get 4 years of documentation down to that 60 minutes. But I think where we landed was, the key stories of Mike and his relationship with the Korean dancers, and then there's a few subplots in there as well. And there's also a number of other things that just went. I think originally there was a 90-minute cut, so we did cut 30 minutes out. So there's a number of other stories that you just have to be ruthless um and just cut storylines out that maybe don't necessarily add to the overarching outcome, which I really wanted to be really predominantly about Mike.
Yes, yes. Okay. No, well done on that. That's a good process, and I understand all that. So the film will now be screening together with Counterpoise as part of the Melbourne Documentary Film Festival. I gather the film will also have some international currency.
Yes, we have had we've already we played earlier this year. Oh God, I just had a total mental blank.
Hmm.
Hang on, I'll look it up in a sec. I'll be able to tell you afterwards where it played. It was in South America. We're
Ah,
also looking at playing in Korea later this year. And I can't say anything at the moment, but I also just had another email overnight about another showing later this year in Australia. So yeah, I think we're still sort of other than the Adelaide Film Festival and now Melbourne Documentary Film Festival. There's still a degree of interest, and I think Korea there's a Korean language version as well. So I'm anticipating that we'll probably get at least 2 or 3 showings in Korea at some stage, probably within the next 12 months. Um, and more broadly throughout Asia, I think there'll be a big appeal for it.
okay, very good, because the film certainly would have that international currency. It has that universality about it.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, okay. Well, well done on that. Okay, now I wonder, Matt, are you working on other projects at the moment?
I am. I'm very much an arts-based filmmaker, as I said earlier. So there's another project I've been working on with another group called Gravity and Other Myths. I'm actually co-directing a documentary with another filmmaker from New South Wales who's actually been documenting Gravity and Other Myths. So they're an Adelaide-based acrobatics company who are actually very successful in Europe. It's a classic example of an Australian company that do really well overseas and reasonably regarded in Australia, but very highly regarded throughout Europe. And they created a work in 2014 and took it to Edinburgh, and they are still touring that work now, 11 years later. It's been touring through Europe, and they've also just recently done New York, and they're currently in Brazil with this work and a number of other works. So that's more of a historical arts-based documentary. Again, COVID proved a bit of a catalyst for these guys, where they had 40 acrobats all land back in Adelaide um, with suddenly with all their tours cancelled. And so what do? Well, you create a work with 40 acrobats and you premiere it at the Adelaide Festival in 2021, as opposed to just what a lot of other companies would have probably done is cancel, just call it quits. Um, so that's one work I'm working on, and there's another work that's sort of a little bit under wraps at the moment with Restless Dance Theatre. That that could be quite incredible it's one of those things that I can't say anything at the moment simply because of funding the way it is
Yeah.
and artistic directors and choices that will or will not be made in the next 6 months. But if it happens, it will be quite remarkable. It'll be a one of the biggest works to ever take place with an entirely with a cast who are comprised entirely of people with a disability.
Uh-huh.
It'll be a dance theatre work. So watch this space.
Certainly will. Look, congratulations. We've been speaking to Matt Byrne, who's the director of Dancing Against the Odds, and that will be followed by the shorter dance sequence Counterpoise. Matt, thank you so much for talking with me.
Thank you, Peter. It's been a real pleasure to meet you. Thank you for taking the time to meet with me today and also find out about our projects.
Absolutely. Wish you well with them all, and thank you.
Cheers.